The evening air carried a hint of rain as Lily walked into the Grand Windsor Hotel, her shoulders heavy with the weight of a long day. She hadn't planned to stop here, this fancy place with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors, but the sudden downpour had forced her to seek shelter, and the warm glow from inside had looked inviting. Lily taught 5-year-olds at Oakwood Elementary, and today had been particularly draining. The parent-teacher conference with little Tommy's father had gone poorly. He couldn't understand why his son wasn't reading at a higher level yet, and no matter how Lily explained childhood development, he seemed convinced she wasn't doing her job properly. 20 minutes of defending her teaching methods had left her emotionally exhausted. She smoothed down her simple blue dress, feeling out of place among the hotel's well-dressed guests. The lobby bar looked quiet enough, though, and she desperately needed to sit down before continuing her journey home, maybe just one cup of tea to collect herself. The bar area was dimly lit, with small tables scattered around a central space where a magnificent grand piano stood. It was a Steinway, polished to perfection, its lid propped open like a giant black wing. Lily paused for a moment, her eyes drawn to the instrument. Something stirred in her chest, a feeling she had long buried. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the bartender asked as she settled onto a stool at the far end of the counter. Lily nodded. "It's stunning. Does anyone ever play it? Sometimes we have scheduled performers, but tonight it's just sitting there looking pretty." He placed a cocktail menu in front of her. "What can I get you?" "Just a cup of hot tea, please." It's been one of those days. As the bartender moved away, Lily found her gaze returning to the piano. 20 years ago, her fingers would have itched to touch those keys. 20 years ago, before everything changed. On the other side of the room, the hotel's main entrance doors swung open, bringing in a burst of loud voices and laughter. A group of well-dressed people entered, their expensive clothes and confident manners immediately drawing attention. At their center walked a tall man with salt and pepper hair, his posture perfect, his smile dazzling as he nodded to admirers who recognized him. "That's Anton Volkov," the bartender whispered as he set Lily's tea down, "the famous pianist. He just finished a sold-out show at the concert hall." Lily's heartbeat quickened. Of course she knew who Anton Volkov was. Anyone with even a passing interest in classical music would recognize the Russian virtuoso who had taken the music world by storm in the last decade. His interpretations of Chopin were legendary, his technique flawless. She had never seen him perform live. Concert tickets were well beyond a teacher's salary. But she owned several of his recordings. She turned slightly on her stool, trying not to stare as Volkov and his entourage settled into the VIP section. There were about 8 of them. Volkov himself, a sharply dressed woman who appeared to be his manager, and several others who might have been fellow musicians or wealthy patrons. They ordered champagne, and soon their corner of the bar was filled with the sounds of celebration. Lily sipped her tea and tried to mind her own business, but she couldn't help stealing glances at the famous pianist. There was something magnetic about him, not just his celebrity but the way he carried himself, like a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows. Lily checked her watch. She should head home soon. Tomorrow was a school day, after all, but the weather made her reluctant to leave her warm corner. As the evening progressed, Volkov's group grew louder, fueled by expensive champagne and post-performance euphoria. Their laughter bounced off the walls, occasionally drawing irritated glances from other hotel guests. Lily noticed the pianist himself remained somewhat reserved, smiling politely but drinking less than his companions. Then his gaze fell on the grand piano. "Anton," called out a younger man from his group, clearly drunk and looking for entertainment. "Why don't you give us an encore?" "The night is still young." Volkov shook his head with a practiced smile. "I've played enough tonight, Pavel. 3 encores at the concert were quite sufficient." "Come on," urged the woman beside him, his manager, Lily guessed. "Just one piece. It's not like you to pass up a piano." "Not tonight, Natasha." There was a firmness in his voice that suggested the matter was closed, but his companions were not easily deterred. They continued to press him, their voices growing louder until other guests were turning to watch the spectacle. Volkov's smile remained fixed, but Lily could see tension in his shoulders. She understood. Even doing what you love can become a burden when it's demanded of you. Suddenly, the man called Pavel stood up, swaying slightly. If Anton won't play, perhaps we can find someone else who will. His eyes scanned the room, coming to rest on Lily, who quickly looked down at her tea. Too late, you there! The lady in blue! You've been staring at the piano all evening. Do you play? Lily felt her face grow hot as heads turned toward her. No, I was just admiring it, she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. But Pavel was already making his way toward her, followed by several others from the group. Volkov remained seated, watching with a strange expression, part amusement, part curiosity. Come now, don't be shy, Pavel said, reaching her side. Everyone wants to play a Steinway. Here's your chance. He gestured grandly toward the piano as if offering her a throne. Really, I couldn't, Lily protested, looking desperately toward the bartender, who merely shrugged, clearly not wanting to interfere with the hotel's VIP guests. The manager, Natasha, joined Pavel. It would be entertaining, she said with a calculating smile. And if you're terrible, well, that would be amusing too, wouldn't it? She laughed, not bothering to hide the mean-spirited nature of the suggestion. Lily understood then. They were looking for a joke, a bit of fun at the expense of an ordinary person. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. I should go, she said, reaching for her purse, but Pavel placed his hand on the bar counter, blocking her exit. Just one song, he insisted. What's the harm? By now, Volkov himself had approached, his tall figure imposing as he joined the small crowd around Lily. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the subtle signs of exhaustion beneath his composed exterior. My friends can be quite persistent, he said, his accent thick but his English clear. But they forget their manners. He gave Pavel a sharp look, and the younger man stepped back, chastened. Lily expected an apology, a graceful end to the uncomfortable situation. Instead, Volkov studied her face with unexpected intensity. You said you don't play, he remarked, but your hands tell a different story. Lily instinctively hid her hands beneath the counter. Her nails were short and practical, her fingers strong from years of classroom work, but yes, they still carried the subtle shaping of someone who had once spent hours at the keyboard. I used to play, she admitted reluctantly, a long time ago. Something sparked in Volkov's eyes, interest perhaps, or the thrill of discovery. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Then perhaps you would honor us with a small performance? Not for their amusement. He nodded toward his now watching entourage, but for the music itself. His request seemed genuine, without the mocking edge of his companions. Yet Lily hesitated. 20 years. 20 years since she had last touched a piano, since the day her father had sold their upright to pay for her mother's medical bills. 20 years of silence, of a dream set aside, of finding new purpose in teaching children rather than pursuing the path that had once seemed her destiny. I really don't. Please, Volkov interrupted, and something in his voice made her look up. There was respect there and a strange sort of hope, as if he had recognized something in her that she herself had forgotten. By now, several hotel guests had gathered, curious about the commotion. Phones were appearing, ready to record whatever might happen next. Lily felt trapped, cornered by attention she had never sought. Volkov must have sensed her panic. He offered his hand, a surprisingly gentle gesture from someone of his stature. Sometimes, he said quietly, we must remember who we were to understand who we might still become. Lily looked at his outstretched hand, then at the gleaming piano. Rain continued to drum against the windows, creating a rhythm that seemed to call to her. 20 years was a long time, but some things once learned are never truly forgotten. With a deep breath, she stood. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as she moved toward the piano. Guided by Volkov's light touch on her elbow, she could hear whispers, see the phones recording, feel the anticipation, most expecting failure, perhaps a few hoping for something more. As she settled onto the bench, the familiar position awakened muscle memories long dormant. Lily placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingertips. She closed her eyes and remembered. For a moment, the world around Lily disappeared. There was only the piano, her hands hovering over the keys, and 20 years of silence waiting to be broken. Behind her, she could feel the weight of watching eyes. Anton Volkov and his entourage, hotel guests pausing mid-conversation, staff members lingering longer than necessary. Their collective anticipation hung in the air, thick as the storm clouds outside. Pavel snickered, leaning toward Natasha. "This should be good," he whispered, not bothering to lower his voice enough. $10 says she can barely play chopsticks." Lily heard the comment and felt a flush of anger rise to her cheeks. She had been ready to stand up, to walk away from this public humiliation. But something in Pavel's dismissive tone sparked something long dormant inside her. Not pride exactly, but dignity. A reminder that once in another life, she had been more than these strangers could imagine. Her fingers touched the keys. The first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the room, hesitant at first, like a voice unused to speaking. Wrong notes slipped in, her timing slightly off. 20 years of rust couldn't be shaken off in an instant. A few smirks appeared among Volkov's group just as they'd expected. But then, like an old door finally opening, something shifted. Lily's hands remembered. The muscle memory buried deep within her began to resurface. Her back straightened slightly, her breathing deepened, and the notes began to flow more smoothly, more confidently. The smirks faded. Pavel's eyebrows rose in surprise. Anton Volkov, standing closest to the piano, watched with growing interest. His head tilted slightly, the way a bird might study something unexpected on the ground. There was skill here, untrained for years, clearly, but undeniable. The foundation of something substantial. Lily was only vaguely aware of the changing atmosphere around her. She was lost in the music now, in the gentle rises and falls of Debussy's masterpiece. How many times had she played this piece as a teenager? Hundreds, perhaps. It had been her mother's favorite. The thought brought both pain and a strange comfort. Her fingers stumbled briefly over a difficult passage, then recovered. By the time she reached the middle section, the bar had fallen completely silent. Even the bartender had stopped polishing glasses to listen. Phone cameras were still recording, but their owners seemed to have forgotten they were holding them, captivated by the unexpected performance unfolding before them. Natasha leaned toward Volkov. "She's actually good," she whispered, sounding almost disappointed that their prank had backfired. Volkov didn't respond. His eyes never left Lily's hands, his expression unreadable. As the final notes of Clair de Lune faded into silence, Lily kept her head down, suddenly aware again of her surroundings and feeling strangely vulnerable. For a few precious minutes she had forgotten herself, forgotten the years between now and when music had been her life. Now reality came rushing back along with an acute self-consciousness. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then unexpectedly applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Hotel guests nodded appreciatively. A woman at a nearby table wiped away a tear. "Bravo!" someone called out. Lily finally looked up, her cheeks flushed. The faces around her showed surprise, appreciation, even a touch of awe. All except Pavel, who looked slightly annoyed that his joke had transformed into something meaningful. And then there was Volkov. The famous pianist was studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away, as if he could see through her, past the kindergarten teacher to the young girl who had once dreamed of concert halls. "You play beautifully," he said simply, his accent wrapping around the words like silk. "I'm very rusty," Lily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he agreed with unexpected bluntness. "But beneath the rust is gold." Before she could respond, he turned to the small crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have discovered hidden talent tonight." His voice carried effortlessly across the room, a performer's voice, trained to reach the back row without shouting. "Perhaps we should request one more piece." Calls of agreement rose from the gathered onlookers. Lily shook her head, panic rising. "No, really, one more," Volkov insisted gently. Then leaning closer so only she could hear, "Show them who you really are." Something in his eyes, respect perhaps or challenge, made her hesitate. She had already surpassed what she thought possible after so many years away from the piano. "Why not go further? What should I play?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. A small smile touched Volkov's lips. "What do you remember?" Lily thought for a moment. Then, without quite deciding to do it, her hands returned to the keys and began the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was more challenging than the Debussy, more technically demanding, more emotionally complex. It was also the last piece she had mastered before her mother's illness had changed everything. The beginning was rough. Her fingers stumbled over passages that once had flowed like water. But with each measure, something remarkable happened. It was as if the years were falling away one by one. Her body remembered what her conscious mind had forgotten: the precise pressure needed for each key, the subtle shifts in tempo, the way to let the melody sing above the accompaniment. Volkov moved to where he could better see her hands, his expression growing more focused. The other members of his entourage exchanged glances, their amusement giving way to genuine surprise. Halfway through the piece, Lily closed her eyes. She was no longer in the hotel bar, no longer surrounded by strangers. She was 17 again, practicing in her family's small living room, her mother listening from the worn armchair by the window. The memory was so vivid she could almost smell her mother's lavender perfume. A tear slipped down her cheek, but her playing never faltered. If anything, the emotion fueled her performance, lending it an authenticity that technical perfection alone could never achieve. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence, that precious pause after truly moving music when applause would feel almost like an intrusion. Then the room erupted in enthusiastic appreciation. Even Pavel was clapping, his earlier mockery forgotten. Lily opened her eyes, disoriented. For a moment, she didn't quite understand where she was or why people were applauding. Reality slowly reasserted itself. The hotel bar, the rainy night, the famous pianist standing nearby with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I told you," Volkov said quietly as the applause continued. Gold. An older gentleman approached the piano, his eyes bright with emotion. "Young lady, that was extraordinary. Do you perform professionally?" Before Lily could answer, another guest chimed in. "Where do you usually play? I'd love to hear a full concert." The questions continued, surrounding her like butterflies, too many to catch. Lily looked helplessly toward Volkov, who seemed to understand her overwhelm. With the practiced ease of someone used to commanding attention, he raised his hands. "Perhaps we should give our unexpected performer some space," he suggested, his tone light but authoritative. The crowd reluctantly backed away, though many continued to steal glances at Lily, now looking at her with new eyes. No longer just a woman in a simple blue dress, but someone remarkable, someone with a gift. As the buzz of conversation resumed around the bar, Lily stood from the piano bench on shaky legs. Her hands were trembling, not from fear now, but from the rush of emotions from muscles used in ways long forgotten. Natasha approached, her calculating expression replaced by something more genuine. "That was unexpected," she admitted. "You've clearly had serious training." Lily nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "A long time ago. And now you don't play at all?" Volkov asked, rejoining them. "That would be a tragedy. Life happens," Lily said simply. "Dreams change. Do they change?" Volkov asked. "Or do we merely set them aside?" Before she could answer, the bartender appeared with a glass of water, which Lily accepted gratefully. Her throat felt suddenly dry, her heart still racing from the unexpected performance. "I should go," she said after taking a sip. "It's late and I have work tomorrow." The ordinary words felt strange in her mouth, as if they belonged to someone else now, someone who hadn't just brought a room full of strangers to tears with Chopin. Volkov nodded, but as she gathered her purse, he handed her a small card. "My private number," he explained. "When you're ready to talk about why someone with your talent is not playing music, call me." Lily stared at the card, then at the famous pianist. "I teach kindergarten," she said, as if that explained everything. "A noble profession," he acknowledged, "but perhaps not your only calling." With that, he stepped back, allowing her to leave. As Lily walked through the lobby toward the hotel's front doors, she was aware of eyes following her, of whispers, of phones being checked to review what had just been recorded. The rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the streetlights as Lily stepped outside, Volkov's card clutched in her hand. The night air felt different somehow, charged with possibility, with questions she had thought long settled now reopened. 20 years of silence, broken in a single evening. And now what? Lily couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling as rain began to fall again, tapping gently against her window. Volkov's business card sat on her nightstand, its elegant embossed lettering catching the faint glow from the street lamp outside. She had placed it there intending to forget about it, but her eyes kept drifting toward it in the darkness. What had happened tonight? One moment she was an ordinary kindergarten teacher seeking shelter from the rain, and the next she was playing Chopin for a world-famous pianist. It felt like a strange dream, the kind that seems so real you keep checking for evidence after waking. But it had been real. Her fingers still tingled with the memory of the keys. The emotions she had felt while playing, joy, sorrow, nostalgia, still echoed through her body like aftershocks. When her alarm rang at 6 the next morning, Lily had barely slept 2 hours. She moved through her morning routine like a sleepwalker. Shower, coffee, toast she barely tasted. The business card went into her purse. Not because she planned to call the number, she told herself, but because she couldn't quite bring herself to throw it away. The kindergarten classroom was a riot of primary colors and children's artwork. 25 tiny chairs arranged around 5 round tables. A reading corner with bean bags and shelves of picture books. A sink stained with watercolor paint. This was her world, had been for 8 years now, and she loved it. Today, though, it felt somehow different, as if she were seeing it through a stranger's eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Lily." The children began arriving, hanging up their tiny backpacks and jackets. Their energy was infectious, their smiles genuine. This was why she taught. These moments of pure, uncomplicated connection. "Tommy brought his pet turtle," announced a small girl with pigtails. And just like that, Lily was back in her element, gathering the children into a circle to admire Tommy's turtle and begin their day with a song. Music had always been part of her teaching. Simple songs to help with counting, with the alphabet, with cleaning up. She had never considered it significant, certainly never connected it to her past life as a piano student. Today, though, as she played simple chords on the classroom's small upright piano to accompany the wheels on the bus, she found herself paying more attention to her hands, to the way muscle memory guided her fingers to the right keys without conscious thought. At lunch break, while the children ate their sandwiches and fruit cups, Lily checked her phone out of habit. She had 12 new notifications, all unusual for a Tuesday. 3 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, several text messages from friends asking variations of, "Is this you?" with a link attached, and a string of notifications from her barely used social media accounts showing dozens of new friend requests and messages. With a sense of growing unease, she clicked one of the links. It opened to a video titled, "Piano Prank Backfires, Kindergarten Teacher Stuns Famous Pianist." The thumbnail showed her at the hotel's grand piano, head bowed over the keys with Anton Volkov standing nearby, his expression one of undisguised surprise. The video already had over 100,000 views. Lily's hand trembled as she pressed play. Someone in the hotel bar had recorded her entire performance from her hesitant beginning to the final applause. Worse, they had captured the lead-up, Pavel's mockery, the clear intention to embarrass her for entertainment. And now it was all online for the world to see. She closed the video, her appetite gone. By the time the children returned from recess, 3 more friends had texted her about the video. One helpfully informed her that it was now being shared on multiple platforms and had been picked up by a local news site. Somehow, Lily made it through the school day. She read stories, supervised art projects, broke up a minor dispute over who would be line leader, all while feeling strangely disconnected from herself. When the final bell rang and the last child had been collected by their parent, she sank into her desk chair and finally allowed herself to process what was happening. Fame, even minor, viral video fame, had never been part of her plan. She had chosen a quiet life, had rebuilt herself after losing music, after losing her mother, after watching her father work himself to exhaustion trying to pay the medical bills. Teaching had been her salvation, her way of creating meaning from loss. And now this video threatened to complicate everything. As she was gathering her things to leave, her classroom phone rang. It was Rita, the school secretary. "Lily, honey, there's someone here to see you," Rita said, her voice tinged with unusual excitement. "He says his name is Anton Volkov. Says he's a pianist, very distinguished-looking gentleman with an accent." Lily's heart jumped into her throat. "He's here? At the school?" In the front office, looking like he stepped out of a concert hall. "Should I send him back to your classroom?" For a wild moment, Lily considered saying no. Considered sneaking out the back door that led to the playground. But what would that solve? The video was already out there. Volkov had already found her workplace. "Give me 5 minutes. Then send him back," she said finally, after hanging up. Lily looked around her classroom with new eyes, seeing the crayon marks on the tables, the slightly wilting plants on the windowsill, the hand-lettered "Our Class Rules" poster with its cheerful borders. What would someone like Volkov think of this place, of the life she had chosen? She was straightening books on shelves that didn't need straightening when she heard a knock at her door. Taking a deep breath, she turned to find Anton Volkov filling the doorframe of her classroom, looking both out of place and somehow perfectly at ease among the miniature furniture and finger paintings. "Ms. Walker," he said with a small nod, "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. How did you find me?" Lily asked, then immediately felt foolish. "The video, of course." "Actually, no." Volkov stepped into the room, glancing with interest at a display of student artwork. "Though I have seen it. Quite remarkable how quickly these things spread." He turned back to her. "I found you because you left your tea receipt on the bar counter. It had your name. The rest was simple. A few calls to local schools." Lily wasn't sure if she should be impressed or disturbed by his persistence. "Why are you here, Mr. Volkov?" "Anton, please." He moved to the small classroom piano, running his fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. "I'm here because what happened last night was unusual." "It was a prank that didn't go as planned," Lily said flatly. "Nothing more." Volkov looked up sharply. "Is that what you think?" "A prank? Wasn't it? Your friends seemed to find the idea of humiliating a random woman quite entertaining." To her surprise, a flush of genuine embarrassment crossed Volkov's face. Pavel and some of the others, yes. Their behavior was inexcusable. "But what happened after your playing, that was no joke?" "Ms. Walker." He moved away from the piano to stand near her desk, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight silver at his temples that hadn't been visible in the dim lighting of the hotel bar. "Who trained you?" he asked simply. The directness of the question caught her off guard. "Does it matter? It was a lifetime ago. It matters to me." His gaze was steady, genuinely curious. "You have a rare quality. Technical skill can be taught, but you play from somewhere deeper. I want to understand how someone with your gift ended up hiding in a kindergarten classroom." "I'm not hiding," Lily said, an edge entering her voice. "I'm teaching. There's a difference." Volkov nodded slowly, seeming to reconsider his approach. He gestured to the children's drawings pinned to a bulletin board. "Your students adore you. That much is obvious. They're 5. They adore anyone who gives them cookies and reads Where the Wild Things Are with the right voices." That drew a small smile from him. "Perhaps. But there is love in this room. I can feel it." He paused, studying her face. "Yet there is also something missing." "For you?" Lily looked away, uncomfortable with how easily he seemed to read her. "Mr. Volkov, Anton." "Anton," she conceded. "I appreciate your interest, but that part of my life is over. Has been for 20 years. Last night was a fluke. Lightning doesn't strike twice. Unless you build a lightning rod," he countered. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with another notification. Checking it reflexively, she saw yet another message about the video, which had now crossed 500,000 views. She put the phone down with more force than necessary. "And now I have this to deal with," she said, gesturing at the phone. "My private moments splashed all over the internet." "Fame is rarely convenient," Volkov agreed. "But it can open doors. I don't want doors opened. I have a life here. I have 25 children who depend on me to be their teacher, not some viral video sensation. And what about the thousands, perhaps millions, who might be moved by your music?" He asked the question gently, without pressure, a simple inquiry. Lily didn't answer immediately. The truth was, playing last night had awakened something she had thought long dead. The feeling of the music flowing through her, of being completely present in each note. She had forgotten how it felt. Like flying. Like speaking a language more precise and more beautiful than words. "I had my chance," she said finally. "Life took a different turn." Volkov nodded, seeming to accept her answer for now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I'm giving a benefit concert this Friday evening. For music education in underserved schools." He placed the envelope on her desk. "I would be honored if you would attend as my guest." Lily looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Why?" "Because talent deserves to be witnessed," he said simply. "Even if only one more time." With that, he turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "The video, it doesn't show the whole truth of last night." "What do you mean?" "It shows a prank that backfired. It doesn't show what I saw. a gifted artist remembering who she is. His eyes held hers for a moment longer. The invitation stands, Ms. Walker. The choice, as always, is yours. After he left, Lily stood motionless in her empty classroom, the silence broken only by the ticking of the alphabet clock above the whiteboard. The envelope sat on her desk, a quiet challenge. Outside her window, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the playground. In the distance, she could hear children laughing, the sound carrying on the wind like music. Slowly, almost without conscious thought, Lily moved to the classroom piano. She sat on the small bench, designed more for demonstrations than serious playing, and placed her hands on the keys, and began to remember. Friday evening arrived with surprising speed, the days between Volkov's visit and his concert blurring together in Lily's mind. The invitation had sat on her kitchen counter all week, unopened but impossible to ignore. Like a pebble in her shoe, its presence demanded attention even when she tried to focus on lesson plans and parent emails. The video of her playing had continued to spread. By Wednesday, a local news station had called the school asking for an interview. Lily had declined, but the principal, seeing a rare opportunity for positive publicity, had been less enthusiastic about her refusal. "Think about it, Lily," he'd said, leaning against her classroom door after the children had gone home. "This could bring attention to our music program, maybe even funding." "I'm not comfortable being the face of anything," she'd replied, sorting through finger paintings that needed to be sent home. "Besides, it was just one night, one piano. It's not who I am anymore, but was that true?" Each night that week, she had found herself sitting at her kitchen table, hands positioned on its surface as if it were a keyboard, silently playing pieces from memory. Chopin Nocturne, Bach Preludes, Beethoven sonatas she had thought long forgotten. Her fingers remembered what her mind had tried to forget, and the realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Now, standing in front of her closet on Friday evening, Lily faced the decision she had been avoiding. The concert began in 2 hours. The venue was downtown, a 30-minute bus ride away. If she was going to attend, she needed to get ready now. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to her reflection in the mirror. "It's just a concert." But it wasn't just a concert. It was a door opening to a part of herself she had sealed off 20 years ago. A part that, once acknowledged, might not be so easily contained again. With a deep breath, she reached for the one dress in her closet that wasn't practical cotton or washable polyester, a simple black dress she had bought years ago for a colleague's wedding. It wasn't fancy by concert hall standards, but it was the best she had. As she dressed, applied a touch of makeup and twisted her hair into a simple updo, Lily thought about the day her father had sold their piano. She had been 17, her mother in the hospital for the 3rd time that year. The medical bills had piled up like autumn leaves, and one by one they had sold what they could spare. The piano had been the last to go. Her father had held out as long as possible, knowing what it meant to her. "Music will always be inside you," he had told her as the movers took it away. "No one can take that from you." But somehow, in the years that followed, through her mother's death, through college paid for with scholarships and part-time jobs, through the discovery of her love for teaching, that music had gone silent within her, until Monday night, when a cruel prank had accidentally unlocked what she had so carefully buried. The bus downtown was nearly empty, just a few Friday night commuters heading home after late shifts. Lily clutched her small handbag, feeling oddly vulnerable in her dress and low heels. The invitation was inside. She had finally opened it that morning to find not just a ticket but a backstage pass with her name printed on it. The concert hall loomed ahead as she stepped off the bus, its facade lit up against the darkening sky. People in evening wear streamed through the main entrance, their conversations creating a buzz of anticipation. Lily hesitated at the bottom of the steps, suddenly unsure. What was she doing here? These weren't her people anymore, if they ever had been. She belonged in a classroom with finger paints and picture books, not in this world of polished marble and crystal chandeliers. Just as she was about to turn away, a voice called her name. She looked up to see Natasha, Volkov's manager, hurrying down the steps toward her. "Ms. Walker, we weren't sure you would come." The woman's tone was warmer than it had been at the hotel, her smile more genuine. "Anton asked me to watch for you. Please, come with me. We can avoid the main entrance crowd." Before Lily could protest, she found herself being guided around the side of the building to a private entrance. Security nodded them through with barely a glance at Lily's pass, and suddenly she was backstage at a major concert hall, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a performance about to begin. Stagehands moved purposefully, checking last-minute details. A violin soloist warmed up in a corner, running through rapid scales. Someone was adjusting the lighting, calling out instructions to unseen technicians. "Wait here," Natasha said, depositing Lily in a quiet alcove. "Anton wanted to see you before he goes on. He'll be just a moment." Left alone, Lily felt increasingly out of place. Through an open door, she could see into the main hall where the audience was taking their seats. Hundreds of people, the women in elegant dresses, the men in suits. The grandeur of it all made her small-town upbringing feel suddenly obvious. Her thrift store dress inadequate. "You came." She turned to find Anton Volkov standing behind her, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his presence somehow both imposing and completely at ease. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But you did." He smiled slightly. "That says something, I think." Lily wasn't sure how to respond, so she changed the subject. "This is quite a production. The benefit is for music education?" Volkov nodded. "Yes, for programs in schools that have lost funding for the arts. Something I feel strongly about." "It's important work," Lily agreed, thinking of her own students and how their faces lit up during music time. "Every child deserves the chance to experience music, as do their teachers," Volkov said pointedly. Before she could reply, a stagehand approached to inform him that it was 5 minutes to curtain. Volkov nodded his acknowledgement, then turned back to Lily. "I have arranged for you to sit in the front row," he said. "After the concert, there is a small reception. I hope you will stay." It wasn't really a question, but Lily found herself nodding anyway. "Break a leg," she offered, the traditional theater wish for good luck feeling oddly inadequate for someone of his stature. His smile widened slightly. "An American expression I have come to appreciate." With a small bow, he turned and walked toward the stage, his posture shifting subtly as he prepared to face the audience. A young usher appeared at Lily's side to escort her to her seat. As promised, it was front row center, offering a perfect view of the magnificent grand piano that dominated the stage. All around her, people whispered excitedly, programs rustling as they settled in for the performance. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. The stage remained empty for a moment, the spotlight illuminating only the piano. Then Volkov appeared, walking with measured steps to the center of the stage. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Clearly, many in the audience were devoted fans. He acknowledged the applause with a gracious nod, then seated himself at the piano. His hands hovered over the keys for just a moment, a brief communion between artist and instrument, before he began to play. The first piece was Bach, complex and mathematically precise. Lily watched, mesmerized, as Volkov's hands moved with incredible control, each note exactly where it needed to be. His technique was flawless, as one would expect from a musician of his caliber. But there was something more, an emotional depth that transformed the centuries-old notes into something immediate and vital. As the program progressed through Beethoven and into Chopin, Lily found herself leaning forward in her seat, completely absorbed. It had been so long since she had experienced live classical music of this quality. She had forgotten how it felt to be in the presence of true mastery, the way the music seemed to fill not just the air but the spaces inside you. During a particularly moving passage of a Chopin nocturne, Lily's eyes filled with unexpected tears. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, but of recognition, of something long lost, now found. Her hands in her lap unconsciously followed the movements of Volkov's on the keys, muscle memory responding to the familiar patterns of notes. For the final piece of the program, Volkov paused longer than usual before beginning. His gaze swept the audience and seemed to settle momentarily on Lily. Then he began to play. It took her only a few measures to recognize the piece, Debussy's Clair de Lune, the same piece she had played at the hotel. But where her version had been hesitant at first, then flowing with emotion, his was technically perfect from the first note, each phrase shaped with exquisite control. Yet as she listened, Lily realized something surprising. For all his mastery, Volkov's interpretation lacked a certain raw quality that had been present in her playing. His Clair de Lune was beautiful, objectively superior in technique, but hers had been alive, imperfect but deeply felt. When the final notes faded away, there was that magical moment of silence before the audience erupted in applause. People rose to their feet all around her, calling "Bravo!" and applauding until their hands must have hurt. Volkov acknowledged the ovation with graceful bows, then left the stage only to return for 3 encores. Throughout it all, Lily remained seated, processing what she had realized during his performance. Perhaps technique wasn't everything. Perhaps what she had to offer, even after 20 years away from serious playing, was something valuable in its own right. As the audience began to disperse after the final encore, an usher approached Lily again. "Ms. Walker, Mr. Volkov asked me to escort you to the reception." The backstage area had been transformed. Where there had been busy stagehands and equipment, there were now elegantly dressed patrons of the arts holding champagne flutes and engaging in animated conversation. Lily accepted a glass when offered but didn't drink, feeling increasingly out of her element. She was about to find a quiet corner to wait for a polite moment to leave when she heard her name being called. Turning, she saw Volkov making his way toward her, still in his performance attire but with his bow tie loosened slightly. "You stayed," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "Your performance was incredible," Lily replied honestly. "I've never heard Debussy played with such precision." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition of what she had left unsaid, perhaps. "Precision is not everything," he admitted. "Sometimes feeling matters more." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by an elderly couple eager to compliment the pianist. More patrons quickly joined them, and Lily found herself pushed to the edge of the growing circle of admirers. She used the opportunity to slip away, making her way toward the exit. She had almost reached the door when Volkov's voice stopped her. "Leaving so soon?" Lily turned to find him standing a few feet away, having somehow extracted himself from his admirers. "I should get home," she said. "It's late, and I have things to do tomorrow." Volkov studied her face for a moment. "You have questions," he observed. "About the music," she hesitated, then nodded. "Why did you play Clair de Lune? Was it a coincidence or—" "Nothing about music is coincidence," he replied. "I played it because you played it. I wanted to show you something." "What?" "That there is room for both of us. Different interpretations, different voices." He took a step closer. "The world doesn't need another pianist who plays exactly like me, but it might need someone who plays like you." Lily stood frozen, Volkov's words echoing in her mind. The world might need someone who plays like you. The very idea seemed absurd. She was a kindergarten teacher with a dusty talent, not a concert pianist. Yet something in his assessment had struck a chord within her. "You don't even know me," she said finally. "You heard me play twice after 20 years of silence. Sometimes twice is enough." Volkov's gaze was steady, uncompromising. "The question is not whether I know you, but whether you know yourself." Before she could form a response, they were interrupted by Natasha, who approached with a man in an expensive suit. "Anton, the dean of the conservatory is eager to speak with you about the scholarship fund." Volkov nodded, but his eyes remained on Lily. "Think about what I said," he told her quietly. "Music finds its way back to those who truly need it." With that cryptic statement, he allowed himself to be led away, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts. She slipped out of the reception and into the cool night air, her mind spinning. The bus ride home was a blur. By the time she reached her apartment, it was nearly midnight, but sleep felt impossible. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table, hands restless, fingers tapping out silent melodies on the wooden surface. What Volkov had suggested was crazy. She had a life, a career, responsibilities. 25 children who counted on her to be at school every morning with a smile and a plan for the day. She couldn't just throw that away for some wild dream she had abandoned 2 decades ago. And yet, the memory of playing at the hotel, of the music flowing through her like a current of electricity, wouldn't leave her. For those brief minutes, she had felt more alive than she had in years, more herself. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her friend Beth, a fellow teacher. "Just saw you on the news." They showed the video from the hotel. "When were you going to tell us you're secretly a piano genius?" Lily sighed. She had been avoiding the faculty lounge all week precisely to escape such questions. She texted back a vague response about it being no big deal, then set her phone aside. But it was a big deal. She knew it, and now, thanks to that video, the rest of the world knew it too. Sleep finally claimed her in the early hours of the morning. Her dreams filled with music and spotlights and impossible choices. Saturday dawned bright and clear. Lily woke late, unusual for her even on weekends. She made coffee and stood by her apartment window, watching the neighborhood come to life below. Families heading to the park, joggers, dog walkers, ordinary people living ordinary lives. She had been one of them until a week ago. Now she felt caught between worlds. On impulse, she grabbed her keys and left the apartment. There was somewhere she needed to go, someone she needed to talk to. The nursing home was on the outskirts of town, a low brick building surrounded by carefully tended gardens. Inside, the smell of disinfectant couldn't quite mask the underlying sense of age and illness. Lily signed the visitor log and made her way down a familiar hallway to room 237. Her father sat in a wheelchair by the window, a book open but unread on his lap. At 74, Richard Walker's body had been ravaged by Parkinson's, but his mind remained sharp, his eyes clear and observant. They brightened when he saw Lily. "There's my girl," he said, his voice wavering but warm. "This is a nice surprise. Thought you weren't coming until tomorrow. I needed to see you today." Lily bent to kiss his cheek, then sat in the chair opposite him. "How are you feeling?" "Same as always. Better now that you're here." He studied her face with the insight of a parent who truly sees their child. "Something's happened." "You look different," Lily smiled. He had always been able to read her. "I played the piano, Dad, for the first time since we sold ours." He nodded slowly. "Tell me," so she did. The whole story spilled out. The rainstorm, the hotel bar, the famous pianist and his cruel friends, the unexpected performance, the viral video, Volkov's visit to her classroom, the concert. Her father listened without interrupting, his gnarled hands resting quietly on his book. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother would have loved to hear you play again," he said finally. "It was her greatest regret, you know, that your music was another casualty of her illness." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. "It wasn't anyone's fault." "No," he agreed. "Life happens how it happens. But that doesn't mean we can't try to set things right when we get the chance." He reached for her hand, his grip weaker than it once had been, but still reassuring. "What do you want, Lily? Not what you think you should do. Not what makes sense. What does your heart want?" It was the question she had been avoiding all week. "I don't know," she whispered. "I love teaching. I love my kids. But when I played again, it felt like coming home after being away for so long I'd forgotten what home felt like." Her father nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You don't have to choose, you know." "Not completely. Life isn't always either or." They talked a while longer about possibilities, about fears, about the practical realities of bills and rent and health insurance. When Lily finally left, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the nursing home's neat lawn. She felt lighter somehow, more certain. Sunday passed in a flurry of lesson planning and laundry, the mundane tasks of preparing for another school week. But beneath the routine activities, something had shifted inside her. A decision was forming, not yet fully articulated, but growing clearer by the hour. Monday morning, Lily arrived at school earlier than usual. She went straight to the principal's office, where she requested a meeting during her planning period. Then she headed to her classroom to prepare for the day. The children arrived with their usual energy, full of weekend stories and Monday morning wiggles. Lily led them through their morning routine, calendar, weather chart, sharing time with practiced ease. But when it came time for their usual morning song, instead of using the small upright piano as mere accompaniment, she really played. Her students fell silent. 25 pairs of eyes watching in wonder as their teacher's hands moved across the keys with unexpected grace and skill. She played a simplified version of a Mozart sonata, adapted for their young ears but still carrying the essence of the original composition. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, that special pause that follows truly moving music. Then 5-year-old Tommy raised his hand. "Ms. Lily," he said, his face serious, "that was really pretty. Can you teach us to play like that?" His question triggered a chorus of similar requests. Me too. I want to learn. Can we play the piano? Lily looked at their eager faces, something expanding in her chest. I can teach you some basics, she said. Would you like that? Their enthusiastic response made her laugh. For the rest of the morning, alongside their regular lessons, she introduced simple finger exercises, explaining how each finger had a job to do when playing piano. The children were captivated, holding up their small hands and wiggling each finger as she instructed. During her planning period, Lily met with the principal. She had expected resistance to her proposal, but to her surprise, he was immediately supportive. A pilot music program? With you as the instructor? He leaned back in his chair, nodding slowly. After that video, the school board would be crazy not to approve it. Do you know how many parents have called asking if the piano teacher from the video gives private lessons? I'm not ready for private lessons, Lily said quickly. But I think I could start something small here. Maybe one afternoon a week to begin with, for children who are interested. And you'd still keep your kindergarten class? Yes, she said firmly. I'm not giving that up, the principal smiled. The best teachers are those who keep learning themselves. Draw up a proposal and I'll take it to the board next week. By the end of the school day, Lily felt a new sense of purpose. She stayed late, drafting ideas for her music program, researching grants for equipment, making lists of simple instruments they could start with, until, hopefully, they could acquire a better piano than the old upright in her classroom. She was so absorbed in her planning that she didn't hear the knock at first. When it came again, louder, she looked up to find Anton Volkov standing in her classroom doorway for the second time. You're still here, he observed. So are you, she countered, setting down her pen. I thought you'd be off to your next concert tour by now. Not quite yet. He entered the room, glancing at the papers spread across her desk. What's this? A beginning, Lily said. I'm starting a music program here at the school. Nothing fancy. Just an introduction for interested students. Volkov picked up one of her notes, his eyes scanning her neat handwriting. You need instruments. A proper piano. Eventually. We'll start small. He set the paper down, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I might be able to help with that. The foundation that sponsored the benefit concert has resources for exactly this kind of initiative. Lily looked at him suspiciously. Is that why you're here? To offer funding? Partly, he admitted. But also to ask you something. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. The conservatory is holding a special concert series next month. New Voices in Classical Piano, they're calling it. I'd like you to perform. Lily stared at the envelope, not taking it. I'm not a new voice. I'm not any kind of voice in classical piano. You could be, Volkov said simply. With some practice, some coaching. I have a job. I have students. The concert is on a Saturday evening. One piece, 10 minutes of your time. To show the world what music can be when played with genuine emotion. He set the envelope on her desk. Think about it. I'll be in town for another 2 weeks helping with the Foundation's scholarship program. If you decide yes, call me. We can work on your piece together. After he left, Lily sat looking at the envelope for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called her father. Dad, she said when he answered.
How would you feel about coming to a concert?
There's someone I'd like you to hear play. You? He asked, hope clear in his voice. Lily took a deep breath, a smile spreading across her face. Yes, she said. Me. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Mornings were devoted to her kindergarten class, afternoons to developing her music program proposal, and evenings, 3 times a week, to practicing with Volkov in the conservatory's rehearsal rooms. Her chosen piece was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the last piece she had mastered before her mother's illness had changed everything. Under Volkov's guidance, her technique improved rapidly. Muscle memory returned, fingers finding their strength and precision. But more important was what she already had, the emotional connection to the music, the ability to make each note tell a story. Remember, Volkov told her during their final rehearsal, perfection is not the goal. Communication is, let them feel what you feel. The night of the concert arrived clear and cool. Backstage, Lily smoothed the fabric of her new dress. Dark blue, simple but elegant. Purchased with her first paycheck from the newly approved after-school music program. Her father waited in the front row, having been transported from the nursing home by a service Volkov had arranged. As she waited for her turn to perform, Lily thought about the strange path that had led her here, from a chance rainstorm to a cruel prank to this moment, about to step onto a stage she had never dreamed of reaching. Life's twists and turns were unpredictable, sometimes painful, sometimes miraculous. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage with steady steps. The lights were bright, the audience a blur beyond them, but she didn't feel afraid. This wasn't about impressing anyone or proving anything. It was about honoring the music that had always been part of her, even in the silent years. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. In that moment of connection between artist and instrument, she thought of her mother, of her father, of her students with their eager faces, of Volkov who had seen something in her worth saving. Then she began to play. The music flowed through her like a river finding its true course after years of diversion. Each note was a word in a language she had never truly forgotten, a language that spoke directly to the heart. Her fingers moved with confidence, born not of arrogance, but of understanding that what made her playing special was not technical perfection, but honest emotion. When the final notes faded into silence, Lily kept her head bowed for a moment, saying a private goodbye to the girl she had been and hello to the woman she was becoming, a woman who no longer had to choose between her love of teaching and her love of music. The applause, when it came, washed over her like a wave. She looked up to see the audience on their feet, her father's face shining with tears and pride. In that moment, she knew that what had begun as a cruel prank had become a precious gift. The chance to reclaim a lost piece of herself without abandoning the person she had become. As she took her bow, Lily caught Volkov's eye in the wings. He nodded once, a gesture of respect between artists. No longer teacher and student, no longer famous pianist and ordinary woman, but two musicians who understood the same truth. That music, like life, is not about perfection. It's about finding your authentic voice and having the courage to let it be heard.